Tonight, we have a welcoming by Clarissa Fish, the retiring special education director.
I didn't think we had to use this.
Oh, definitely.
I don't think so. So welcome. You know who I am, I believe. So we have some highlights from summer school. This just wrapped up. Who's on there? How many people are watching? 42? Oh, thank you for supporting the school board and showing up tonight. So we had approximately 86 students from the Mountain Valley region and 27 from the Nazinskit region who received special education involved in summer school. 62 students, grades K through 8, were involved in the Title I Summer Learning Camp. And we had 60 students from Mountain Valley High School and a couple of students from Buckfield High School engaged in credit recovery. So not much else going on other than I guess there's some maintenance things and things being fixed around the district. Yes. And then I just wanted to thank all the staff who worked this summer, including transportation, custodial staff, and food service. We couldn't do it without all these people. Some people would probably choose to take the summer off, but we're lucky that they don't. So, and then I just wanted to thank all of you for your support of me and all the initiatives I brought to you all these years and for supporting special education, despite the numerous challenges that we face. So thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Clarissa.
You're welcome.
We wish you the best.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, item 3 is a consideration of the minutes. Approve the minutes of the June 17th, long time ago, meeting of the Western Foothills Regional School, Unit 10 School Board meeting minutes as written.
So move.
Motion made by Peter, seconded by Chad. Any discussion, errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? That motion carries. Thank you. This is the time for public comment in person at the school board meetings. Is there anybody? Didn't see anybody sign up. No. Okay, communication correspondence. Obviously, we don't have student board reps right now. So we'll move on to upcoming meetings. August 14th at 4 o'clock in the central office is the finance committee meeting. Followed at 5 by the policy committee meeting, followed at 6 by the buildings, grounds and transportation meeting. So if you're on any of those committees, please make every effort to attend. August 19th, we have a school board meeting here. And following that school board meeting, we're going to have a school board workshop as close to 7 o'clock as possible. Steve Bailey from the Maine School Management Association will be here to give us some updates and some things going on with
And a chance to answer.
and a chance to answer questions.
Yes.
Obviously, yes. Thank you. So bring your questions and Steve's the guy that can answer them, trust me. Okay, committee reports. We probably don't have any. So
We did have
Yeah.
special meetings
buildings,
for finance and building grounds and transportation.
okay. Who has the finance? You?
That would be Dan.
Yeah, I was watching it on my cell phone.
Right.
Oh, that's
You want to
right.
kind of give us an update?
But there's also
Yeah,
minutes in the
packets.
packets. So everybody has minutes from both of those meetings as well.
Yeah, what we did was, we had to do, there was two things. It involved both the finance committee and the building and ground. Because it was to do with how we're gonna finance the repairs we have to do at Mountain Valley Middle School. We have to tear up the
carpet.
carpet and paint the hallways as the big thing. Then we've got, so we had discussed what we're gonna do. We're gonna have Lowry and French do that since they're gonna be tearing the building down. It's just too bad this has to be done now because we're vacating the building in 15 months. So but we have to, the health and safety of the students is much better than what we currently have.
Yeah, and did you want to mention about the freeze or?
Yes, so one of the things we talked about was how we ended with the fiscal year 24 budget. And we were very, very close where usually we have a considerable amount of carryover. And that was also due to some factors that we weren't able to foresee and put in the budget. The cost of out of district, the cost for transportation for both out of district and homeless students. Also the number of students that we had going out of district. And on top of all of that, we had our seed reimbursement from the state. It's the same percentage and we pay the same percentage, but main care went up considerably. So when a number goes up, your percentage of that number, even though your percentage stays the same, your amount goes up. So all those things contributed, and then to us being really close on the 24 budget. So that gave, Leah, who brought it to me at our attention, that we could potentially have the same issue going forward into 25, because of course we've already done our budget and we didn't, foresee these things as much. I mean, we put all those numbers and we increased them, but we didn't foresee it at the level it was. And then on top of it, as Peter mentioned, was the need to do some things to the middle school before school starts, to remediate air quality. And so all of those things, obviously, the cost of those things were not in the budget. So for all of those reasons, we've decided to start the year with freezing the budget and then regrouping in December, and see where we're at. Because then we can look and see, are those things as we were afraid they might be and very high and over, have we almost spent the money in those lines and that's only December? Or maybe on the other hand, it's not, the budget isn't quite as tight as we thought it might be. And then we can potentially not be in a freeze for the remainder of the year. So that's what we decided to do. So, and a freeze means things like, we talked about that in the meeting. But like professional development, we'd use our grants for that, but try not to use our local money for that. Field trips, looking at just going, like just the local ones, just in our communities, or perhaps going to some places virtually, because we do have that capability. Supplies only if absolutely needed. So things, extracurricular things that maybe we forego new uniforms until we see if we have enough money. And we, no new furniture, and no overtime or limited overtime. So those are just some examples of things. There's a lot of things you can't do in a budget because contracts are what they are, and the needs of students obviously are what they are. So we'll do our best and see how that goes. So that's the long-winded version of finance.
I have a question. In the past, we've gone to school board fall conference. Does that affect that or not? I mean, we usually just go for the day on it, but still it's an expense.
That's
To
a
look
good
at,
question. I didn't think about that, but that's true. That does come out. Maybe, yeah, we can talk about it. I mean, obviously, we need to have a delegate there.
Right.
So,
But we'll need a
But-
delegate there.
yeah,
too. That's
yeah.
what we need to act on.
yeah, okay. So we can
We'll
talk
talk.
about that. Yep.
Good point. Okay, on that. Okay, anything on the buildings and grounds? Think we,
It was mostly about how are we going to find space
Right.
for the areas that there's a couple areas, there's a module or home or a portable that's going to be closed. It's not worth fixing.
that's at the middle.
We-
That's at the middle
We
school.
discussed moving the portable that was moved to Buckfield back up here, but that's just $20,000 that we could do without. Wouldn't make a difference anyway.
Right, we'd then have to turn around and get rid of it. So it doesn't really make sense. So we're looking at some other things. Our high school alternative ed program, which was going to have to move when we closed the middle school building anyways, we're looking to move that as one example of something to make room at the middle school for the places that we'll close off. We're going to close off the boys' locker room. We can get by without that, and that did not have good air quality. So
Not good.
nope.
Can I ask for an update on where that building is at currently? What
Yeah,
asbestos?
I have
removal-
it in my
That's here?
in my
Okay.
report.
I was
Yep.
looking for it, but I didn't see it
Coming
on
right
the
up.
agenda.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Negotiation committee update. Well, the good news is we reached a tentative agreement with the secretaries. They'll be going out to vote for them, and they'll get back to us whether they ratify it or not. And the other one was the
Building ground.
Building and grounds, we're waiting for them to vote on their contract.
right,
We haven't heard yet.
right. So those two things are hopefully behind us. And Region 11, anything? Okay. They skip Region 9, they did. Thank you,
Region
Chad.
9 is Wednesday.
Yeah. Um. Chris Brennick's not online, huh? Okay,
You still can talk about it.
huh?
You
Yeah,
can still
I'm
talk.
gonna-
about it. Yeah.
We have an opening on Region 9. Chris was interested. Denise was that representative, Denise Cross, who signed up to be on this board, but if nobody's interested in being on Region 9 school board, then I'll ask Chris to take that spot and represent the town of Rumford. As I do.
You have to be in one of the 4 towns
Right.
for Region 9.
He does it for Mexico.
And Greg,
I
we
does-
have 3 members
Right.
on that board.
So Chris has asked if he could be on that, so, oh,
His position, extended ELO, extended learning opportunities, is it really dovetails with what Region 9 does with CTE. So it really makes sense.
it does. Okay. Curriculum committee probably has not met, so
No.
we'll move on to superintendent's review.
Okay. Lots going on. So first, I always like to report on Mountain Valley Community School and where we're at. It's amazing now. Every 2 weeks, you can really see a lot of changes. Section E, which is the first section where they started, which is the middle school section, actually has stairwells. You can actually walk upstairs. The floors are in, the roof is on. They're working on the framing of the interior walls. And then the other sections are each one step behind. So there's a roof on a lot of the building. They've got the where the elevators, shafts, they've got those almost completed. And they're working their way down through, of course, all the concrete is done and the exterior walls are almost up on the whole entire thing. So they're looking to get the power hooked up by the end of August. And we're actually going to start the furniture committees. So I talked to them about how that works. and I'm going to be looking for folks come September. And that'll be September through November. We'll be working together for all the different areas to look at what we have, but mostly what we will get, which is most of everything new. They're also interested in giving tours. So we thought maybe we could set up a tour before a school board meeting one of the times, probably come September, October, which would be cool. And then groups of students. So I thought that's a great way to show students what types of jobs there are out there and just to get excited about their own, their school. So we'll be looking at how we can kind of manage that. So that's always exciting. And I would say they are a little ahead of schedule. I hate to even say anything, but I would say they're at least a month ahead of schedule because we did the beam topping middle July and they had told me August. So they're rolling right along. So that's excellent. Yeah.
Are they open to community members going up and having a tour?
I think if we could schedule it.
I'm thinking it would be like the Hope, they take the Hope guy people around, Hope Association people.
Oh,
Maybe some of the guys or guys and girls in the community business owners.
Yeah.
Or the Friends of the River Valley. I'm just thinking of people that like Hope Association, those guys would love going up there, even if they didn't get to go up in it, but just
right.
And like Friends of the River Valley, they help out where they can. So
Yeah.
it'd be
Yeah.
nice to let them see stuff.
We could
Yeah.
ask at a meeting, because there's a lot of activity going on there, and
Yeah.
you have to wear
Yeah.
protective equipment and stuff, so, but.
Yeah.
it's
But
possible.
if it was planned ahead of time.
Yeah.
And not too huge of a group,
Right.
The other thing, just so people know, I forgot, I kind of forgot about this. But on August 29th, I think, Channel 13, WCSH, right? Is that CHF? No,
WGME,
WGME. I never remember the
TV
letters.
star here.
Yeah, I don't know. So they came and they're doing a story on the infrastructure of public schools across the state. So because believe it or not, I still have a hard time believing this, but the average age is 70 years old, 70 years old of school buildings. And so they had called me about our 7 buildings and the age and all this. And they said, and do you have a school project going on? And I did, and and I talked to them all about it. And they said, well, could we come up and could we, see it and, do pictures of it and interview you? And it was it went on and on and on. And then we went over to our Rumford Elementary School so they could see, why we were having this and doing this. And so anyways, that whole thing is going to be aired on August 29th. But I think they were able, Landry French took them right in. So they were really able to see, the building from the inside and, so hopefully they'll show very little of me and lots of the buildings and infrastructure. And my point, I was trying to make and get them to see that. And I think that was the point behind their story, was that the infrastructure in the state is really hurting. And most districts really need the state's help. They can't do it by themselves. So hopefully that will be helpful to that. Speaking of buildings, Nazinsket Valley Building Committee has been really active this summer. They've had several meetings, and I have to give Matt a lot of credit because he's kind of trying to be the person that moves that ball along for me, which is wonderful. But we're also working to finish up the 2 building applications to the state, because the state is currently taking applications the end of August. So the next school board meeting, you will have a copy of the application that we want to submit. Um, the two applications that we want to submit. So, so that'll be good to have that done. And Harriman has been helping us with that and with the building study, and they've come up with a host of options that we will probably need to narrow down at some point, but and talk about. But we really wanted to focus on getting the applications done for August, so we will probably meet again in September. Hiring, we're still looking for several teaching positions and some ed tech positions, of course, along with special ed. However, I think we're in decent shape. We do need some more ed techs, but we still have a few more weeks. We're trying for the month of August to avoid doing a lot of transferring of staff within the district so that buildings and principals can get set with who they do have and figure out, okay, where are our missing links and potentially hire some more people. But it's hard when we move people around right up to the last minute because it's just makes it difficult. Summer events, we talked about a lot of the things that were going on. We actually have the auditors here right now. Or I say here, they do a lot of their work virtually now, so that's helpful, I think. But Leah's doing a lot of work with them. August 14th and 15th, which is next week, we have our administrative retreat. And the week of August 19th, we have Ed Camp, we're calling it, which is a lot of professional development for our teachers and ed techs. And then we have new staff orientation on August 22nd. So lots going on. And we also had last week, Crystal Doogie did a week of TCI training. And we had a full group. We even had a waiting list, which was, I mean, it's good. We had the slots filled. And Crystal got a lot of feedback, and she's going to be sharing that with our administrative team. And so I think that's good. Mount Valley Middle School, the work, it's called Enviro Advantage. And they are the folks that work on the abatement of any asbestos. So we obviously, one of the things that we were told to do that would make the biggest difference is to remove all the hall carpets. And we're lucky enough that in the building demolition project that, of course, we already have in the works through our project, they had done the studies to see what was under, in our buildings, so under the carpet. And so they are able to come forward now and do the removal of the carpets and along with the removal of the asbestos. And they can do it as part of the project that, is paid for based on the building project, that is awesome. So they are working as we speak. They worked the end of last week and they'll be working. We've got our fingers crossed that they might be done Thursday, Devin. And so the idea is to have the carpets removed, any of the asbestos abated, and have it all carpetless so our folks can paint the concrete. So at least it will have paint on the concrete. The other work that we're doing is in one of the classrooms, we're replacing the walls in the classroom. And then the other was one of the portables that we're just closing off. And we have a closet that we're closing off, which was like a custodial closet, and the boys' locker room. And then we will do another testing and then to follow that up, we were going to have the folks that did the testing come out to be available to talk to parents and staff. So I didn't think it made sense to do that in project. I thought it makes more sense to have it done, see where we're at, and then have people be able to ask questions. And the other thing we're looking at is the roofing, because we do know that some of the mold has formed because of leaks in the roof. So we're having that looked at and patched as needed. I mean, obviously, like Peter said, it will be taken down in 16 months or so, but so we're working diligently on that. We have every reason to believe we'll have it all done and it won't interrupt the start of school. We did move one training this week, I believe. No. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, it was next week. I was thinking it was this week. All right.
Peter has a question.
There was some mention of getting insurance involved, especially with a leaky roof and whatever. Has anything gone further on that? Because anything we can do to reduce cost by getting insurance to pay would be much better than us, the district, doing it at this point. Because I know we had briefly discussed it at the Building and Grounds meeting. And
Yeah, I think that if we can, we will. But we do know from the other time that we had an experience like this, it didn't, because it was formed from water.
is it? a
It
leaky
wasn't a
roof?
specific event, so we're not positive that we're gonna try. We're gonna try, so. So,
So on some of those readings, it looked like the office area had the same height of mold as the boys' locker room, and we're closing the boys' locker room. So what's going on? And I thought that there was 2 custodial closets that had issues that were being closed. Could be wrong.
I
But
think there were 2 custodial closet. I think one was being closed and the other was the walls are being torn out. But let's let Devin speak more
So
specifically.
the number that people were asking about, if you look in that column, they add up the entire from top to bottom, right? So that bottom number that everybody read does equal more than or equal to the boys' locker room, right? But there's a certain, and don't ask me to say the word, but I'll get you the report and we can pronounce it together.
I've got some of the reports here, if anybody
Uh,
wants a copy.
Okay. And I can point which one it is to you, but I can't say it, so. That specific one is what they're looking at, that is harmful to us. And in the boys' locker room, it was significant. I think it was like 2,300 just with that specific one. And in the main office, it was only at like 400, which is only 100 of outside. Outside was 300. So that total amount, and we brought this up to the BGT committee.
Right.
Someone had said that, and we caught it. I went back to it here and asked them, and they said that number is the total amount added up in that entire column. So that's why it looked like it was the same.
So if anybody wants a copy, here's a full copy. I don't know if it,
Ready?
but those are the things that we would have when they come out explained to us. Okay. Okay. So those would be some of the things that when they come out, we'd have them explain to us, but it just made sense to have to me, it made sense to have the whole thing done. And, for the questions instead of have them come out and then have them come back. Plus, I wasn't sure how many people that would be interested would be available in the middle of the summer versus more into August, so. Okay, and moving on, last but not least, I wanted to report on the behavior committee. I'm calling it the behavior committee work. So this was the So Greg and Matt and myself and Chris Carver and Steve McGinty from WFEA met on July 22nd to discuss the process because we said we wanted to have some form of a committee or a task force or something from the board to work on the issues. So it was decided that we kind of have two things. First of all, we have a district intervention committee that's been active. It's a monthly committee that's been active over the years. And we talked about adding specific teachers and ed techs. There are teachers and ed techs on it, but we talked about adding specific teachers and ed techs to it to talk about what we could do for some of the issues. So we decided that we'd first have a group meet and define what the issues are that we wanted to address in the district intervention committee. So we agreed for the committee to have 2 staff members from Morabi, 2 from RES, and 1 from HSES, and then 2 or 3 board members and 1 of the leadership from WFEA and an administrator. And we have talked to Matt and I have talked with Crystal Doogie, who is the administrator of WFRP, very well trained and versed in obviously behavior, knows the district incredibly well, but also is kind of a little bit removed in the sense of, you know, she runs WFRP. She's not one of our building principals or anything in terms of the elementary schools. And so we thought she would be really good at facilitating this discussion. And so anyway, so we've got, everybody's working on getting whoever's going to be on this group to identify the issues. And then we'd have several meetings in September. And then we'd go from there into the district intervention committee and add the folks, because it doesn't make sense to have, we all agreed that, you know, you want to use some of what you have already to help figure things out than just, you know, start yet another group and having everybody doing kind of, you know, doing the same thing only over here and over here, whatnot. So that's where we are.
Question, could you please clarify when you're talking about the issues?
Yep.
What do you mean by the issues? What are the issues?
That's what the group will talk about, discuss, to define what they feel the issues that need to be solved in the district intervention committee, what they are, like defining them.
So for example, injuries that are occurring in the district, that's an issue.
Yep.
Violent behavior by the students, that's an issue. I mean, those are the issues that we're talking about when we say issues in this.
Yep.
So this committee is specifically geared toward that.
Yes, we want people from the buildings to actually be able to discuss that and talk about, okay, what do you see are the issues that we need to work specifically to solve?
Okay. It just seemed a little vague when it just says issues. I just wanted a little more detail.
Well,
but
the issues that they brought to the school board.
the last meeting that we had.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's regarding the injuries and stuff that are happening.
correct.
Okay.
So anyways, and I think that's it.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? All right, I guess you can move along,
Okay.
run right down
Oh,
everything
okay.
else.
Well, the first thing is we have an administrative department report. I do get a break.
I know you do. We'll get a good one this time.
So, first of all, you can tell just from that report from June 17th to where we are today, August 5th, the school district doesn't take a break over the summer. Kids get to have a little bit of a break. But even when you hear what Clarissa shared with you, there was over 150 kids that were involved in getting an education over the summer in some structured format here in the school district. So it's not the shut everything down and reset for 2 months and then reset. We're constantly working at trying to get a little bit better. And some of that is our physical plant that we're trying to make improvements with. Some of it's our professional development. Some of it's the instruction that we're continuing to provide our kids around reading, writing, math, and all kinds of skill development. So the schools never really take a break. Some of the professional development that we've seen over the summer, Deb referred to a little bit. We now will have the bar program in all grades in the Mountain Valley region. It will be 6 through 10, and in the Buckfield region, it will be 7 through 10. And that's the building assets reducing risk. So we extended it a little bit last year, and now we're going to make sure that it's at all of our middle levels and also up into our high school. And that's really taking a comprehensive look at students, their learning, what's going on with them academically, socially, emotionally, and how they're buying in. And then also helping our staff at that level develop some skills to better serve our kids on that social emotional front through something called, what was that, Peter? Panel will enter standby mode in 17 seconds. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Peter. So that they'll have a curriculum for that. And then also tying into what Deb ended with the work that we're going to be doing with the intervention committee. We've already started to bring in some people for professional development to work with our staff during the opening day, during the opening workshop days. We have a gentleman or an organization that's fronted by a gentleman by the name of Scott Irvin, and he has the behavioral manual is his big that's his big project that he's worked on, and he's going to be working with our Morobe staff and with our RES staff. And we're able to pay for some of that through some of the things I'm going to talk about today, which is where we are with our title funds and our grants that we've been able to bring in. Also, starting not next week, but the following week, we do have Ed Camp. And what Ed Camp is, it's taking advantage of our experts on staff here. We have a lot of our teachers who are really outstanding educators. They've been recognized as with their national board certification or Teachers of the Year for the state of Maine, or they're actually teaching at the college level, and we're taking advantage of their skills and trying to improve the overall skills of our staff with people who are looking to improve as educators. So we have some work that we're doing with some social emotional stuff, behavioral stuff. Bethany is going to be doing a session on some stuff there as well, restorative practices with all kinds of different things to try and help teachers become a little bit better at their craft. And that will be going on the week of the 19th to the 22nd. And really looking forward to that, have some high participation rates. I don't have an exact number because I haven't closed the registrations yet, but that's something that we're also able to fund with some of our title money that we get from the federal government. So last year at this time, I presented everybody with our ESEA overview, and that's our federal grant money that we get. It's allotted to us based on our free and reduced rates and also our academic performance. And then I also provided something called the RSU 10 data story, and this is an update on both of those fronts. So a few of you participated last year, and some of you participated this year in something called the CNA, Comprehensive Needs Assessment. We're required to do that in every building that receives Title I, school-wide Title I funds. For us, we have 4 buildings that receive school-wide Title I funds. We have Rumford Elementary School, Morobe Elementary School, Hartford Sumner Elementary School, and Mountain Valley Middle School. So they all have to do a pretty lengthy CNA. And those of you that sat through it know it's about an 80-page document that we go through, and we examine a lot of different aspects or components of the educational programming. On top of that, I've asked that both the high schools, Mountain Valley High School and Buckfield Junior Senior High, complete an abridged version of a comprehensive needs assessment, where they look at their data and they come up with what their goals are going to be for academics and for attendance. So for us, what you see on your paper, the first part are
are the district-wide goals that we pulled together based on the completion of our CNAs. So looking at all of our data and looking at what we're currently doing and where we need to improve in a realistic manner. So for us, it's improving 5% with our students in the area of mathematics achievements. That's getting 5% more students next year at or above grade level in math based on the NWEA. And then it's 5% increase also in literacy based on the NWEA, and that's comparing spring score to spring score. So when we compare scores, what we did this year was we looked at the spring score from 23 compared to the spring score of 24. So we have a full year of growth to be able to compare. And then the other one, the third goal that we have is a decrease in our chronic absenteeism. Anyone that's been around here a few years knows that we at one point had a chronic absenteeism district-wide that was well over 40%. We were knocking on the door of getting it below 30%. I'm pretty confident that next year we'll be below 30%. And so that's why when you look at that, we're going to shoot for 25% for next year, which would be almost a 7% decrease, which I think is very attainable looking at the trends that we have. And that's in the data story that you have on the next couple of pages. And there'll be some schools that I really want to make sure I celebrate when I cover that. Below this with the ESEA overview, the next part, those allocations, those are provided to us by the federal government. We get an award letter every year that tells us how much money that we will receive for those different titles. Title I is dealing mostly with improving students' academic performance in reading, in literacy and mathematics. That's what the focus of Title I is. And for us, the way that we spend a majority of that money is on paying for our interventionists, the ed techs and the teachers who provide interventions for kids at the elementary level for those students who have fallen behind and even up into the middle school level. That's where a majority of those funds come from. Title II, that's professional development. And that's professional development for teachers and for administrators. And it's supposed to also help to serve to retain administrators and teachers. So a lot of that money goes into the work, what we pay for. If you hear of instructional coaches, we have two instructional coaches in each of our elementary schools. And their job is specifically designed to help our teachers get better at teaching and to work with them through coaching cycles to help them improve at their craft, to break down some of the data that we have and to have those conversations with those teachers and to stay current on best practices. It was the instructional coaches that really led our work when we were looking to select a new literacy program. They're the people with the expertise in what current best practices are, and we really leaned heavily on them to guide that work as we were looking to select that with the staff. Then the next one, Title IV. Title IV has to do a lot with technology, and so a lot of the different things that we'll purchase, it's technology and communication, and we will use that to do things like pay for some of our Apogee programs that we have, the way that and that's our online communication programs, so that our messaging gets out to people. It might be used right now. Brian and I were talking just today about how do we get some iPads into some certain professionals' hands and what's the cost of that to try and make sure that we're supporting that as well. So those are the three major titles that we get money from. In past years, if you were on this board if you had that report from last year, you would have seen Title V on that. And this is going to seem really crazy. We didn't qualify for Title V last year, and Title V is rural and underprivileged schools. Somehow we bounce back and forth every year between being on Title V and not. And a lot of it has to do with population density more than anything else. And so sometimes we hit the cut line, sometimes we don't hit the cut line. And so this year we didn't, next year we might. And so it's kind of like depending on the year and depending on what our population is doing in the community and also the communities around the state. That's what has an impact on that. So that's kind of an overview of the titles and where we are with titles. Before I go through and do anything else, there's projects in there that I'll describe a little bit. Any questions about that section of the titles? Okay. The next section, it's when I develop projects, I have to develop projects. There's a rank and distribution that I have to pay attention to while we're building projects. And rank and distribution gets back to student population And the school with the highest levels of poverty have to get they have to get the largest number of dollars per student. So I have to really pay attention to that when we're moving, when we're moving money around and we're paying for different programs through our title funds. So that's what, when you look at that, you might say, well, why does this school get this much and this school doesn't? That's what I'm paying attention to when I'm building the title budget. The title budget gets built. After I get done building it, I have to go through and work with the principals of the schools that get title money. They have to approve it also. Leah has to make sure that I haven't screwed up anything on the financials, which is really beneficial. And Deb has to approve it. And then it goes off to the state, and the person that monitors all the ESEA money for the state has to approve that as well. And then they would kick it back. Then they send it back to us. And right now, for as far as the state goes, we're a low priority status, which is really good. I don't want you to think that that's bad. We're a high receiver. We're one of the highest receivers in the state for title money, yet we're a low priority status because as they go through and they audit what we're doing, how we do it, and the stability of the people that are doing it, we rank very highly in all of those areas. We get our reports in on time, we spend our budget appropriately, and we have a lot of stability. So that means that they trust what we're doing at the state. So much so that they want to come over and check out some of our programming this summer because they felt that we had some model things going on with some of the grants that we've been able to apply for. So, and that's a feather in our hat when we start talking about how do we do business here in RSU 10. There's a lot of schools around us that would like to be low priority because when you're medium and high, that means that there's a lot more hoops you have to jump through because you didn't jump through them initially. So we're in a good place for that. So just continuing to look at the different projects that we have, this school-wide, and that's distribution that we have for each of the schools school-wide. And again, most of that's staffing and that salary and benefits that we have. It does have some professional development included in there. Then we have homelessness. And we have another grant that we've completed for the homelessness to help support some of the funds that we have to spend on homeless. Sometimes if you don't receive other grants, and we've been really lucky to be able to secure some other grants, you have to build that into your title funds as well to try and offset some of the costs. But we've done a good job getting some other grants there as well. Family engagement, that for us, a lot of that is also some of that Title IV money and our communication that we have, the community and being able to pay for our Apogee program and now our rooms addition to that through our Title IV funds. And that's really a huge benefit to us because that means that we don't need to put it into our budget. We have an opportunity to pay for it out of our federal funds, and it is all family communication. That's what we're looking at it as. And also that helps pay for part of a position that we got out of another grant, the family liaison, Casey Flagg, comes a little bit out of that grant as well. And then the last one, professional development. So weeks like Ed Week are really expensive to run because we're also paying a curriculum work wage for the people who are participating in it. So this line helps not just to pay for bringing in the professional development, but to make sure that we're compensating our teachers for their time and their commitment and their learning. So those are the major projects that we work on with the ESEA funds. Any questions about that?
So you measure this year to year through the NWEA, and that happens in the spring, end of school, and then.
So the data story that you have on the next page is I'm using the data from the NWEA, both their achievement and their growth. And we give the NWEA at least twice a year. We have to give it in the fall, and then we give it again in the spring. And we're using the spring score both times because that's the cycle that we want to be on. It's also the cycle that the state uses to determine how good our schools are, how well our schools are performing. So we're really hyper focused on the fall and on the spring administration of the NWEA. And what you'll see is I looked at what are the areas that we're really focusing on as far as a school for improving our academic performance. We're looking at decreasing chronic absenteeism. That's that first column broken down. And when you look at that chart, it's broken down by school. And when you see S23, that's where we were in the spring of 23. And you see S24, that's where we are right now, spring of 24. What you're seeing is a lot of data. This is just initial data to start conversations. This isn't a deep data dive. Each data point that you see on this, there's a way for us to go in there a little bit deeper on things like the CNA or with our multi-tiered system of support teams or staff leadership teams or intervention teams to look at some more information and really drill down a lot deeper into the data. So when you see attendance rates, this is an initial conversation starter when we're looking at data. So I don't want you to think that this is the only thing. We spent a good couple of hours just at our last A-team meeting, just looking at data, building by building, and trying to figure out, well, what do I need? What else do I need to help me understand how we got to that data point? And it might be some more information on specific students, specific grade levels, specific programming. But so I just want to make sure that you don't look at this and say this is the end all be all for data. This is the starting point when we're working with it. So as you look at it, some places I really want, I think that there's some big gold stars out there. And I'll start right in the chronic absenteeism column. And Mr. Wilkins and the Hartford Sumner Elementary School staff getting their chronic absenteeism rate down to 21.7%. And that's a 13.3% decrease from last year. That's outstanding, the work that they've done. And he had the fourth grade had no students who were chronically absent. And that's not easy to do. And that's 2 years in a row that the fourth grade at Hartford Sumner has been our best grade as far as attendance, our best group, our best cohort. So they're doing something really special over there to get those kids into school. The next group I want to highlight was Buckfield Junior Senior High with the math achievement scores. And to be able to move a positive 3 points last year on math achievement and get over 50% of his kids on grade level. That's great work right there. Some things that we look at though, if we see some trends like towards the bottom of the page, you see some trends of 2 years back to back below 30%. Those are some things that we look at that would cause us to do a little bit more mining into what that data is, and trying to say, okay, is that just a couple of years? Are we talking, how far back does that trend go? And we'll work with that data. Moving on, NWEA reading achievement, and the Mountain Valley Middle School going up 6% more of their students are meeting the standard or on grade level with reading as far as reading achievement goes. And in particular, the sixth grade at Mountain Valley Middle School. Brittany Furlan I'm going to give her a direct plug. She's done some pretty amazing things with the program over there and being able to realize those scores moving quite a bit. So definitely kudos to her. And back to with the next, and those are the achievement. Now, the next set of scores you'll see are growth scores. So when you take the NWEA, they give you a target that you should be moving towards. And so that's looking at what percentage of kids met the target that they should have. So that's not those kids might not necessarily be on grade level, but they've made at least the amount of growth that they should have during a school year. So that's really that, and that's the impact of teaching, right? Is moving kids from point A to point B. We're going to get them at all kinds of different places. We want to see kids reaching their growth targets every year. And that's really important, knowing that we get kids from all kinds of different starting points. So again, right back at Buckfield Junior Senior High for math, they had 62% of their kids reach their growth target in math. And that's an increase of over 14% from last year. So that's a nice thing that we want to see, and we hope to see. We hope that trend continues. Right, those are the things that we're always looking for. And then in reading, I have a 1A and a 1B. Mountain Valley High School had 53% of their kids meet their growth target, and that's an 18% increase over last year. And Mountain Valley Middle School had a 17% increase from last year. Those are all good. Those are good numbers to have. The science assessment, that column, we're the state, that's the only test we aren't using the NWEA for. We're using the state Meridian test. And they were supposed to have all the test results by August, and I haven't seen them yet. And I'm pretty sure we're into August. That's nothing new for the state, for us, for getting test scores or results on time. As soon as I get that, I'll update that. But what you're seeing is last year's Meridian scores. So at Mountain Valley High School, 41.4% of the students and met the standard. And that was in the number that you see that compared to, that 38.7%, that was the state average. And I'll highlight that because anytime we can beat the state average, it's fantastic. So some really good stuff happening right upstairs from us on a regular basis with the science tests, with the science department, and how our kids performed on that science assessment. And last but not least, the ODRs, office disciplinary referrals. What you're seeing is the number of disciplinary referrals or write-ups that we had last year in each of the buildings. And if you look at Mountain Valley High School and Buckfield, that one's a tough one because the size difference. So it's not a percentage thing. So I'll give them both a gold star because Buckfield had 92 less referrals and Mountain Valley High School had 163 less referrals. So some really good stuff happening in those
We have
buildings.
restorative practices in both of those
We
buildings.
have restorative practices in both of those buildings. We have very active assistant
Yeah.
principals in both of those buildings. We have really strong tier 1. That means everyone gets it. PBIS programming, even though it doesn't look like elementary PBIS programming, it's very strong, and they both have the bar program for their freshmen. And I think all those components work in concert with each other really well and support students making good choices in classrooms. And plus, just being a little bit older and more mature and understanding choices and consequences, I think that helps out as well. So that's our data story that we have for the district. And I think this is an important piece of historical knowledge about and really what we're supposed to be doing as a district, right? Teaching, learning, making kids good citizens and not good, knowledgeable citizens. That's what this is. Any questions that you might have? Yeah.
First, I have a few questions, but the one that was most on my mind because you just finished it, is the disciplinary referrals. What constitutes a disciplinary referral?
So that's a really good question. And what we're going to be doing with that information is we're going to start, and Clarissa and I had the conversation of how do we know that everybody's calibrated the same?
Right.
Why is there such a dramatic swing that one school can have less than 400 with 400 kids here, but another school with 250 to 280 kids has over 1,000? So we need to go back and look at how is that being explained? Is it consistent? And if it is, what's happening? I know really what we did at the high school level, because when we put it in, I was still working in this building. And we talked about what you have to do when a kid misbehaves and how we're going to document it and what constitutes a major and what constitutes a minor. And we would have staff meetings talking about what that process would look like. We need to now use this data is our conversation starter of when have you had that type of professional development at the elementary level, so that if you and I are both teaching, we're both putting the information in for the same thing and not a different standard depending on what classrooms are. So that becomes part of the conversation.
Would it be fair to say that might be something the behavior committee should take a look at to standardize that across all of the schools in the district? So we're actually having the same conversation defined by the same terms?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we'll get back to, is because it's tough. First, we need to know how much training has been done. And if we know that's been the same, then we'll have to go in a different direction. But we have to have the conversation. We have to have some initial conversations to make sure that when I say it's an ODR and you say it's an ODR, that we're both saying the same thing.
Oh, regarding the bar and the restorative practices, are those also being enacted at RES and Hartford Sumner? Because those numbers show an increase.
Yeah,
So
the bar program it started out as a high school program, it's moved to middle school, and it's middle school, high school program, so it's not designed for it's not designed for elementary grades. Instead, at the elementary grades, we've been using something called Second Step as our SEL curriculum. And so that's one of the things that when we talk about data is we see a difference, right? We see that this group has lower, and then we look at what are they doing different than this group. So, but it's a different curriculum. And restorative practices, they have it at over at Hartford Sumner Elementary School. And that's part of what Dave Kilborn does at Hartford Sumner, is he works with the staff and he works with students on restorative practices over there, but we don't have it in the Mountain Valley region.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes.
I'm all of a sudden remembering that there was a change in the NWA, correct? Was it more years ago than is reflected on this? It's the through line.
Main through year assessment.
Main through year.
You're
Okay.
on it, Allison. You know it. There was a change,
Mhm.
but it happened for the 22-23 school year.
Okay.
And that's it was kind of that in space were one of the reasons why I didn't put the 22 data on here, because I wanted to make sure we were comparing apples to
Right. That
apples.
was my question. Okay. Thank you.
And dovetailing off of Allison's comment, so when you said we could go back further and we could mine in more deeply about these academics, we actually really can't, because we're not going to be talking apples to apples.
There's a confidence interval that we would have. It's not exactly the same, but the state's put out some stuff about confidence intervals and the plus minus whatever points. So we could look just to see were we still seeing kids successful or struggling in the same areas. It might not translate exactly with scores. So.
Okay, and to look a little deeper into some of these numbers, I'm looking at the Morobe reading achievements, as well as RES, both math and reading achievements. And then I'm noting the Mount Valley Middle School math achievements. And I have numerous questions. First and foremost, I'll talk about the math at Mount Valley Middle School. And I had been hearing that there was not a full-time math teacher. Something had happened at one of those grade levels and kids really missed out on like a whole year of math. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, we've struggled with staffing. Ironic piece, the grade level that struggled the most with staffing had the greatest growth in math over at Mount Valley Middle School. But we brought in our interventionist to teach the second half of the year in that area. And she actually moved she working with those kids resulted with some really good scores, some growth there. We've adopted a new math program at Mountain Valley Middle School. Ed Gems is the new math program to try and address some of these scores. And I'm also going to, do you mind if I jump into the reading a little bit too?
Sure, go ahead.
So Hartford Sumner has been working with programs that are based on the science of reading for a long time. Their Into Reading program has the 5 pillars of science of reading, and we've talked about that before. Whereas the Mountain Valley region schools, we're using Lucy Calkins program. And so when we started to adopt reading programs, we really looked at what Hartford Sumner was doing and realizing this stuff that they're doing with the science of reading, it's working. We got to that was another motivating factor for getting away from some of the whole language Lucy Calkins work and moving into a program that's based on the science of reading. And that's why that was one of the driving forces or catalysts behind us moving in that direction. So that's a good example of how do we mobilize this data? How do we turn it into something that we're going to actually use to improve education? And that's one of them right there, because we don't want those scores, right? We want everybody to have those scores of Hartford Sumner, which really helps. Those are great numbers. So
Can I just add one thing? When Matt, you talked about, I don't know what words you use, but drilling down or going down into the other way, other than going back into other years, the other thing that means is you can have groups of teachers take take the scores and look at groups of kids. So you can actually look at some of the areas in a test and say, oh, we have these kiddos that did really well on these kinds of concepts, but really struggled on these kinds of concepts. So what could we do differently when we get to those units? Or what potentially is our curriculum missing in those in those concepts? Or do we have, is there, out of the fourth grade teachers, there's somebody doing, the kids over there do excellent in that area, and the kids over here do great in this other area. So let's have those teachers teach those units to all the kids. So there's all those different types of things that groups of staff and administrators can look at when you dig down into it, not just across the years, but down into it.
Probably my last question then is,
That's okay. This was going to be a short presentation, and by my standards, we still have like 20 minutes, so. Yeah, but that's.
Jerry's.
okay, so, well, I might say two things. Stepping back and looking at the forest for the trees and hearing words like, we want a goal of 50% of our students to be at grade level that's like a just concerning statement. I would like to see 80% at grade level or better. And so am I not understanding something about where education is at, or am I missing something? Because these actually look to be horrible numbers.
I think it's being realistic about achievement scores, and that we have kids coming in at all kinds of different levels. And we can't control that. But I think I like looking at the growth scores. How many of our kids met that target for their growth? Because if they're starting out behind and we're always playing catch up, saying that's really we want to move them to make sure that they hit their growth, so that at some point they're on grade level. But for now, I think that we just have to be realistic about where our kids are starting. Nobody wants to see those achievement numbers. I pacify it with, we have low achievement numbers, but our growth numbers are really solid. So the teachers are adding value to what the kids with the instruction is kind of the rough interpretation of it. So that's why I include the growth numbers on there.
Okay, and now this will be my last comment for this. I do want to commend the teachers, because from the sounds of what we heard when the teachers brought the grievance forward, that learning has been significantly interrupted at both MES and RES. And the concerns that we were reading about in those 28 testimonies that were handed to us at the last meeting, many of the concerns were about learning loss. And we heard of interruptions between class learning, and one class having to vacate their room and go into another room, which was actually interrupting the learning that was going on in the second room. And there was a whole lot of concern about kids they're not learning. And so I look at these numbers, particularly at Morobe and at Rumford Elementary, and I do appreciate that you reminded us about the reading program and how that's going to be changed. However, I would like to see, and I don't even know if we can compare and look into this, Deb, as we dive in deeper, but how much of a correlation are these numbers due to the learning interruptions from student behavior, teachers being injured, like that whole violence in the classroom? Like, how can we dig into that to find out if that's what's going on with these numbers? Because that's very concerning.
I think that's right. That's a lot of how do we have to first get used to having data conversations, and being data wise is a really tough thing, because a lot of people want to jump into we need to first just know what we're looking at. And then we can jump into I wish I knew a little bit more about this. And then we can get closer to the whys or the correlation between A and B. And that's one of the things that when we look at it, we kind of pump the brakes a little bit, but we're always time pressed. We don't have a lot of time to look at this. So we we've carved out a bit of a PD plan this year, and I'll bring that to the next meeting. That will allow us at least once a trimester to dig a little bit more into some data with our staff, because that between everything else that we won't, most of the time is out front of kids. And it's just tough to find those moments when we can just sit down with this and have the right data out front of us to connect A to B to C to improve. So, but I have a bit of a plan. I think it'll get better, but it starts a lot with just awareness, right? We haven't had data conversations for a long time. That's been a bit of a void. Bringing it back out and knowing, with starting with these conversations here with principals, being able to know this is where we're weak, this is where we're strong, and then why is that the case? So it is part of it.
When you talk about, we can, in fact, Clarissa has been working on this for me, but we can look at those disciplinary referrals. We can dive down, just like I said about the reading and the math, dive down into those and see what, how many, like when you see a number, Hartford Sumner, 1,053, how many kids were that 1,053? Right, exactly. We can look at that. We can look at it, is it in one grade range? Is it in, one area? Is it usually at recess? You can look at all that stuff. And we often say it's like we're data rich, much of the time. It's just finding that time to do that and make those, try to get that information so that you can then make some changes to act on it.
And we need to make it an emphasis.
Yep.
Right. We need to make that an emphasis, because if we don't, then it's not always fun stuff to look at. That's one thing. Kristen had her microphone turned back on, Peter. I know that you're waiting.
Mine is just a quick one. I said I wouldn't talk anymore. I'm sorry. You had mentioned that we haven't really looked at the data for too long or very recently. Is that a COVID interruption? Like what is the answer for that you just said?
I think that's what it is. I think that it's part of the other issues being addressed that took a higher precedence, and this is part of the return to routine, right? Is making sure that we have those conversations and making sure that we're talking about this, and we're getting better. We are getting a lot better. I know that none of this stuff is new to principals right now, right? None of this stuff is new to teachers right now. This is something that's pushed out pretty right. I know that I beat the drum a little bit more regularly in the last couple of years than what I remember. So, but we went from just figuring out distances to now let's get back to teaching and learning. So.
Isn't this what the behavior committee supposed to be doing? We're putting two people from each school together with an administrator, whatever, to look basically at that question on the disciplinary thing. Because we're not going to solve it overnight, but it has to be brought to the surface of where the problems really are.
Yeah.
Teachers really aren't going to solve it right off the bat. But looking into it and having a group of people, such as that behavioral committee, is going to be dealing with those issues on a regular basis and trying to bring it to the forefront so that it gets addressed. Right now, it's not being addressed because these kids are coming in and they're off on their own thing.
I think a lot of that, Peter, we have to connect the data to the anecdote, right? And that's sometimes we get caught in one world or the other, but we really need to live with both so that we can say, this is what's happening, this is where it's happening, this is who it's happening to. Yeah.
And we also have MTSS committees, multi-tier system of support in Merobe and RES. And I believe Ryan Wilkins wants to start one over at Hartford Sumner School. And the one at Merobe is like it's it's an exemplar that people have come in and observed. They do such a good job. And that's one of the things those committees do. They look more at child specific, but they'll take the data, whether it's the Swiss data, for what Matt was talking about with the discipline or the academic data, and look specifically, and then with the teacher reports and all of that. So that's happening as well.
I just want to I think data is great. I think it's great that we're looking at it and focusing on it. And it's a baseline when we really want to look at certain points of our students' learning to work off of. But I also want us to remember that this is not the whole story of a child's learning in RSU 10. There are awesome things going on in our classrooms all the time. So I just want to throw that out to teachers, and the test scores are important, but they're not the whole picture.
I hope it was a lot of information. I hope it's useful information. That's so
Yes.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have continued this summer having some resignations, and that happens because other districts have openings. So I don't think I need to read all the way down through them, but you'll see them here. And just to highlight, Richard Stickney, after 32 years, is retiring this month. So that's a big one. So, and transfers, a lot of it is because we have these resignations. People, look at some of the openings we have and their areas that they have wanted to move into. So we typically, the process there, just so people know, is I grant the transfer, but after conferring with the administrators in both areas, and looking at the person's making sure that everything they have is all in order and they qualify. And most of the cases, they're doing the same job, only in a different building. So you'll see those there. And then appointments, several people have been appointed to be an advisor or a coach. And then hiring. So I've hired Aaron Beatty as a special ed tech 3 at RES. Chris Arugio as a special ed tech at the middle school. Noah Marston as a special ed tech at Buckfield Junior Senior High. And Jennifer Clement, who is already a part-time or a very part-time clerical school secretary at Morabi, and she's going to take on the part-time special ed clerical support at Morabi as well. So that kind of makes sense. And then at WFRP, they've hired Shira Waite as a special ed teacher. So we've done a fair amount of hiring of those are non-teaching staff. And then we had another person successfully complete their probationary period, and that is Nicole Cooper over in Hartford Sumner Elementary School as a custodian. And I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Matt, for a great presentation.
Yes.
And thank you. Okay, we don't have any old business. Item 9 under new business is to act on the final approval of the superintendent's hire of Mariah Pelletier as a grade 3 teacher at Morabi Elementary School.
So move.
Motion made by Allison, seconded by Dan. Discussion on that. You have her resume in your packets. Any discussion, questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor? That motion carries, and please forward these down front, please. The resumes. Okay, item 2 is to vote to authorize the issuance of a $700,000 tax and revenue anticipation note.
So move.
I'll read it. I move that the vote entitled Vote to Authorize Issuance of a $700,000 Tax and Revenue Anticipation Note be approved in form presented to this meeting, and that the secretary file an attested copy of said vote with the minutes of this meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Leah, you want to just kind of give us I know this is a yearly thing, but can you just inform the board what this means?
You know, a lot of our, we have a lot of grants that are reimbursement based, so it's just to cover, we don't have enough cash flow, basically for people, cover that. Cash.
Until it, yeah,
We don't very often use it. but
Right.
it's good to get every year, just in case we ever ran into that situation.
thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That motion carries. Act on elections of board officers.
Only have missing 3. Right? We're missing 3 of us. Aaron, Janet, and who's
Denise.
or do we have?
I'd like to, because we've got a committee meetings coming up, and yeah, I mean, I think everybody knew it was coming up. I mean,
Oh, I just.
yeah, I know, I see. But there might be other people missing next time. I mean, who knows? But
I'd like to nominate Greg Cucina for board chair.
I'll second it. I move nomination cease.
Second.
will you accept it?
Yes.
Okay. All those in,
Yeah, you
Yeah.
say.
okay. We have a motion and a second to nominate Greg for the board chair. And we had a motion and a second for nominations to cease. So the vote for nominations to cease. Everybody in favor of nomination ceasing? Okay, that's unanimous. And everybody in favor of the motion? Okay, there you go.
You.
Take it over.
Okay, thank you, folks. Nomination for board vice chair.
Chad. Chad.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations?
Nominate Peter.
Okay, I'll second that. Any other nominations?
A motion to cease nomination.
Second.
Okay, vote to cease nominations. All in favor? Okay, motion for Chad Cullerton to be vice chair. All in favor? That motion carries. Motion for Peter to be vice chair. Okay, congratulations, Chad. Okay, appoint school board committee members done by each. Most of you have signed up and been approved. I mean, we can formalize this, but I think, everybody pretty much wanted to stay where they were. If that's not the case, and I know there's 3 folks missing, but I think we have a pretty,
I can
Yeah.
read them. I can
Please,
read them
please
so
do.
that, so finance, we have Peter, Dan, Janet, and Kristen. And Janet did say she wanted to stay on that.
yeah,
And we had Denise, but we're trying to get a hold of Denise and find out.
it's been difficult.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but so that's enough on a committee, if everybody's happy with that. Policy, we have Allison, Janet, Bonnie, Chad, and Darcy. So it sounds like all of you folks would like to stay. Curriculum, Allison, Kristen, Bonnie, and Darcy. And then personnel, Kristen, Aaron, Bonnie, and Ed. And Aaron mentioned she'd like to keep what she's on. And then BGT, Peter, Dan, Aaron, and Ed. So that works. And then just right now for negotiators, and we don't use everybody every time, but we have Greg, Chad, Peter, Dan, and Janet. And if anybody is interested in becoming a negotiator, just when trainings come up, we'll let people know, just, and then, so Region 9 will be Greg, Peter, and Chris Brennick, and Region 11 is Chad. And then the two not standing, but the two advisory committees are the Nazinski Building Committee. We have Allison, Aaron, and Chad on that. And actually, Kristen, you're on that. Yeah, I think, yeah, no, and I think it's good
Yeah.
if all of you from down in that region are on it, because you can't always all come. So, it's good to, and then the Building Advisory Committee up here that's really kind of ended up being open to whoever, but basically Greg, Bonnie, and Peter are on that up here, and that, yeah, so. I think, anybody think of any other questions? I think it's good, and we have our meeting schedule, and we'll keep rolling along. And I'll have committee agendas out pretty quickly for next week.
And we'll have to bring our own lunches too. This point on,
We're not buying food.
cookies, salad.
Yeah.
We'll
Salad, I know.
start a.
If I don't have a meeting the night before, I can do something. It's just really hard when
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Act on the second reading of policy BED, remote participation in school board meetings.
I'd like to motion to table this until, well, I can talk about how long, but motion to table. Do you want me to? I can,
Please.
okay. So it's important to me that we as a board support the expertise of the staff that we hire. And I've heard Brian, and I'm concerned about the management of remote commenting. That anyone in the world really could use our school board connection for any number of things. So anyway, I would like a more specific plan from Brian as to how the legitimacy of Zoom commenters will be handled. That they're not from another hemisphere, things like that. And then also, we're switching platforms. Am I correct, Brian, for this meeting? And does that affect whether we start doing this now or hold off?
Check. We're switching over to Google Plus for Education from Zoom. So we just submitted the PO for that. I have training on that at the following next week. And at this point, I just don't feel comfortable with the setup of Zoom. I mean, Google Meets over Zoom. So there's a little bit of a learning curve there for me. There's just a lot of unknowns right now, what's compatible, what's capable. So, right now we're kind of in that limbo. This will be the last Zoom meeting.
Okay, go ahead.
I do support the motion that Allison is making to table this. I would request that we could table it until the meeting where we are at Buckfield High School so that anybody who is interested in participating remotely would really be able to attend and speak at that meeting.
Okay,
So I know this isn't like a motion to table is its own thing. You can't really amend that motion, but I would just ask for a consideration to table until that Buckfield meeting, which I believe is at the end of September.
I think it's going to depend on Brian too. I mean, he needs adequate time to
That's 2 months.
do, yeah.
Yeah, so the implementation of Google, so we already obviously have Google. We're just purchasing the Plus edition. So once that's in place and that unlocks all the features of Google Meets, I'll be able to further assist with the plan moving forward.
so you could let us know when.
Yeah, I
that
mean, if
would
it's
take
2 months from
place.
now, absolutely. That's, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And can I just add, are you meaning the policy committee meeting or the school board meeting?
If we are going to bring this back to an action item on the agenda, I would like for that item to be held towards the end of September so that anyone in Buckfield, Hartford, Sumner who would have to travel to speak to that would be able to do that a little bit easier. Not traveling 45 minutes or so to come and speak to that because this would honestly impact Buckfield region,
So-
Nazinsket region more than anybody here, because 1 in 4 meetings is held in Buckfield.
So the school board meetings in Buckfield are September 9th and November 12th. And then the policy committee meeting in Buckfield is October 16th.
So I would then say November 12th then to give Brian the amount of time that he would need unless he would be ready September 9th. But the public generally doesn't come and speak at policy committee meetings. I think they should be before the whole
No,
board.
okay. I just didn't know whether you were taking this back to policy or,
No, that's.
right, okay, you mean to the board again. Okay.
That's my question is, shouldn't this go back to, shouldn't we have him come in to the policy meeting and present us with whatever he can or can't do when he knows it? Rather than we're gonna wait for him to maybe on that date show up there, maybe not,
Yeah. This is just not interrupt you, but there's another concern that it's kind of come up in other groups that I'm a part of in the state of Maine. But there's groups of people that bomb board meetings. So they're not from the community, basically. So I don't know how I'm going to vet who wants to participate or not.
Go ahead, Pete.
I would suggest that once Brian finds out what's involved, he comes to the policy committee to tell us what changes need to be made here to facilitate it so that you've got it properly. Because if you don't know, I mean, all we've got here is remote audio video for 3 minutes, but still it doesn't really help. I think if you know what's going on and what changes need to be put in and what things about the policy that will enable you to manage it properly, then we can go there. So it should go to the committee meeting before it gets back to the board. I mean, this has already been 3 or 4 times we put it back to the committee meeting.
Should have gone back last.
I would like to comment that we did, was it you? I feel like it had been requested to go back to policy and that vote was denied. And so we currently have a motion on the table to table this and I would like to move to the vote. I'm not sure what the exact wording is to
Fine.
cease discussions.
Okay,
Call the vote. Yeah.
call the vote. All right, all those in favor of the motion to table this for the time being? All in favor? Okay, so this motion is tabled. We'll be in touch and you can,
So the next, we meet policy every month. So we don't need to bring this up for the policy meeting next week. So the next time possible would be September 18th if we were going to talk about this at a policy meeting. So, right. Okay.
Everybody okay with that? All right. Board member comments. Darcy?
I would like to share a comment that I heard from a parent, and this was just in the public, and it kind of shocked me about our district. There are no names in this. I'm not giving any names out. This person said that blank and the boys were talking to a high school student at the basketball court last week. He said that in the bathrooms, kids are smoking, vaping, and smoking pot. Also, while he was standing there going to the bathroom, a girl walked in and just watched him going. He went to the office to report it several times and is always told there's nothing they can do about it. And he also mentioned how they talk about chopping off body parts. So the reason that I'm commenting about this is because, you know, instead of hearing a constituent say to me that kids are expressing, like say if they were playing basketball, hey, this is a shot I learned from my coach at the school, or positive things about his experience at the school. This is the kind of stuff that is being expressed out in public. And what concerns me is when he said that he went for help and he was told that nothing could be done about it, that his space was invaded in the bathroom. And we're supposed to be a school that has safe spaces, and this kid's privacy was violated and nothing was done about it. And when you look at the chronic absenteeism numbers that we're dealing with, very well could be situations like this why kids don't want to come to school. So my question would be, I didn't know what to say about this, because what is a policy that we have? What is a student to do if they're being watched going to the bathroom by the opposite sex in the bathroom?
Right. So unless, like, I can't investigate it unless I know what school we're talking about and
I don't know either. This
Yeah.
is just, you know, like I said, this is just a general comment that was thrown out there, and I was taken back by it. You know, being in this district on this board, to hear this kind of a thing is very uncomfortable. It's very disturbing. So if there is a child coming asking for help with something like this and being turned away, do we have a policy in place or something that says that's how we're supposed to handle it?
I don't know if there's a policy for it, but I would think the child would go to the principal or vice
another person.
principal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know who they went to, so I don't know.
I mean,
Yeah,
That could have happened, like, I don't know, but
I mean,
I'm thinking if it was in a school, obviously, nobody would tell them they can't do anything. But I am thinking that if it was down at Hosmer, we can't do anything as a school down at Hosmer in those bathrooms. You know what I'm saying? If it's in those bathrooms down at the basketball courts, we have
well,
nothing to
that's a
do with that.
possibility, but
The way it was worded, the student made it sound like it was at the school, the high school. Right. Right.
yes.
exactly.
Have them, if they haven't gone to the administration in the building. If they haven't gone to the administration in the building, they should go to the administration in the building. And if they're really concerned after they do that and don't feel comfortable, they can always come to our office and talk with Matt or I, whether they rather speak to a male or a female. There's choices here.
But there isn't any reason
Absolutely.
to say that our district would turn away a student that's having trouble with that.
We shouldn't
know?
ever turn away a student that's having trouble, because here's one of the things that we look at with, you brought up absenteeism, is we want our kids connected and feeling safe so they will come to school. And when I see chronic absenteeism go down, which is what we're trying to do, you hope that more kids are feeling more comfortable coming to school. I mean, it's still, as we keep saying, it's still too higher numbers or lower numbers or whatever they are. But we're working to move the numbers, and that's exactly a reason why. We don't want somebody to feel uncomfortable coming to school. We want them to, and I know our administrators want to make them comfortable to come to school, so yeah.
I know parents. Build off that, just that there is policy. It's actually on the next policy meeting, we're gonna be addressing the new affirmative action.
That's right.
Sexual harassment, there's also hazing, bullying, code of conduct policy. We have a bevy of policies, but it's finding, we need to get, it's tough to say which one it is here because we don't have enough of the rest of the picture, right? Because there's intricacies that would make it go down one avenue as opposed to another. But there are policies and the administrators, that's one of their primary jobs is enforcing the policies and keep the body getting set. So.
I will say that parents call our office and they are never brushed aside. Matt speaks to each and every parent that has an issue. If they ask to speak with the superintendent, they're never ignored or not given that opportunity to speak with her. We have a chain of command. I always, we ask them if they've spoken to the building administrator. If they haven't, we have them reach out to them first. And then from there, if they don't get the results they need, they're always welcome to call this office anytime and speak with either Matt or Deb. They're never, ever put off or ignored.
Any other board member comments? Dan?
This was a basketball game?
It was not a game. It
Oh.
was just some kids playing.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, it wasn't a game.
okay.
Second.
Go ahead.
Thank you for that. I wanted to acknowledge the 28 teachers who came before our board in June. I thought that it was very admirable and brave and courageous for 28 of our staff to sign their names to their written testimonies. And in particular, I was moved by 5 particular testimonies, and I would like to ask, I know that you are already determining how you want to build these committees, but I wanted to ask if specifically these 5 people might be considered for that because they have a what? I'm sorry? What is?
Right, you can't, don't use their names here.
Okay.
And let me just
Yeah.
tell you, Chris Carver and Steve McGinty are representing the association. And they went out to the various places to get people. So some of the people they have, I know are some of the people that wrote some of those and presented. So
Okay,
just so you know
maybe I
that.
will email you then my
Okay.
further ideas on how well represented that, we heard from secretary staff. We heard from, teachers from all different walks or.
Yep.
So I just felt I was really impressed with 5 in particular who I felt had the decades of experience and great perspective. So I wanted to thank all of those who attended our last meeting and just say thank you. I, as a board member, very much appreciated hearing directly from the staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board member comments? All right, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you all for coming.